We get experimental science. We're curious, non-judgmental.
And so there was one guy that I met who was an expert in leafcutter ants. And he was like, I don't get why people freak out with a bullet ant sting. He's like, I've gotten stung. I didn't feel a thing. I don't know why we care. And he was like, I'm convinced it's YouTubers trying to get clicks. Like, he was beyond convinced that that was the point of it. He had said, and I agree with this part, that a leafcutter ant bite is his least favorite one. I've been bitten by a leafcutter ant many times, and the reason it's bad is because their teeth are so sharp that cutting through your skin for them is like a hot steak knife through warm butter. To the point where I would get cut and walk out the ant room, I'd be leaking blood on the floor as I'm walking around the floors, like to my lab bench, and would only notice that I was leaking blood if someone was like, hey, you're dribbling. Or if I looked down and like I was going back to the room and I saw like that I had left a trail. To give you an image, they use leafcutter ants as staples in wildernesses. Wilderness. If you're out in the wilderness and you get yourself like cut, what they do is they take the soldiers and put them near your cut site and have them bite, and then they pop the bodies off and leave the head in you to keep that skin together. That's how sharp those bites are. They are really cool as pets. They are really, really cool as pets. Honestly, it's the soldiers that are the troublemakers. So you just can't anger the soldiers. The very first time I was moving leafcutter ants between their boxes of nests was like with this world's leading expert who was there. He was telling me how to do the movement, and I was getting really nervous because when he lifted out the ants, like they were climbing all over these little tongs that he used to move the fungus. And he was like, okay, now you give it a try. And I was like, oh no, I really don't want to. I feel like they're going to come out. So here I am, taking the fungus and moving part of the fungus with those tongs on over into a different box. I'm not showing my hands because my hands were a bloodbath, but that's just where I had leaked out on one of the boxes that I have a picture of. It's just like blood spattered. You can see how there's those big old ants climbing up those tongs? Them climbing up those tongs onto my hands. You're very much on a time crunch when you're moving that fungus from one container to another. And so the moment, and you have to move them because you have to clean out the existing boxes, just a way to keep the animals in a clean way. And so the moment they come out, they're biting. I didn't drop an egg. I put it into a new box. We didn't have any like bad parts. So they bite the hand that feeds them only when threatened. So they are threatened, HLG, because they were in a closed box to begin with. See how there's a lid on that box? And there's a little hole drilled as an opening for them. So what they think is going on, if you remove the lid of the box, that's the equivalent as if I dug under, because they usually live underground. If I dug underground and cracked open one of their underground chambers. And so that's why they're threatened. So if you remove the lid, which we had to, move the fungus, that's their threatening. So, and even better, HLG, they get threatened by odor. So if you lift the box lid and blow on them, just ever so gently, they will go wild. It's the smell your mouth, Sparky, because the odor they're detecting isn't just the CO2. It's that the odor they're detecting is not the smell they're used to. They're normally used to the odor of this is my colony. And as soon as you blow on them, it's a different odor, right, composition than what you'd have with inside the nest. And that's why they react, because it's novel. Not because necessarily the CO2, not because it's like your breath is smelly. It's just this is a new odor and I have to react to it. I feel like leafcutter ants are not friendly towards families. Ang, I would argue no insect is friendly towards a family of humans because you don't smell like an insect, and so they perceive you as a threat, which makes sense. But that's not dependent on, that they don't like children or anything. It's just, again, different smell. It actually, Ang, there have been studies if you coat your hand in a particular odorant, they won't end up responding to that way. Here's the queen. That really dark mass is the queen. She's covered by hundreds of ants. Here's a funny part for you. Well, I don't know how funny it is, but neither here nor there. If you hold the queen, a leafcutter ant queen or any queen, with your bare hands, I saw Aang suggested that maybe if you held the queen and you put your hand into the colony, there would be acceptance of your hand. That does not happen. In fact, the opposite happens, almost. If you hold in your hand the queen, the oils from your skin cover the queen, and when she gets put back in the colony, she is no longer recognized as queen, but as foreign, and she gets ripped apart and eaten. Yeah. So don't hold the queen unless you want her to die. The gentleman who we got the leafcutter ants from, he's like the world's leading expert on leafcutter ants. He's been part of a lot of documentaries because he knows how to find them. He knows about their biology. The guy doesn't have his like degrees in it, but he's been learning about it for 50 years now, ever since a kid. And so he's the world's expert, right? You don't need a degree to be the world's expert, which is really cool. And so they had him on like many documentaries, and one of them, he dug up a queen, and the goal was they were going to take the queen back to the United Kingdom and have it in this giant chamber that they built for the ants. And they take the queen back and like thousands of workers, and then put RFID chips on the ants to monitor where they moved, a whole bunch of these extra behaviors. And so what ended up happening was, in the documentary, the host is holding the ant in his hand, and he told them, don't hold it in your hand, use a glove. And what ended up happening was he didn't use the gloves. He used his hand, and they put the queen back, and the guy was like, oh, thank God, it's over. And the guy goes, oh, let's do another shoot. So they did 3 takes of him holding the queen in his hand, doing the take for the documentary. And when they got back home and they were unloading the ants, the expert looked up and saw a tunnel where they were carrying the queen's body in pieces towards the trash room. And so he said that he forgot something in Trinidad, so he flew back to Trinidad, he got another queen, and he replaced the queen that they had. He didn't tell anyone, he just went and got a new queen and he snuck it in. This is like a little behind-the-scenes story, so... Well, yes, Wildflower, yes. they had committed ant fraud. Again, the underworld world of ants.